Of all of the major manufacturers which played a role in the development and ultimate perfection of the banjo in the United States, the name Gibson is the one which remains most recognized. While Gibson is also well known for their other fretted instruments, the banjo innovations and designs to come out of the factory at 225 Parsons Street in Kalamazoo, Michigan during the 1920s and 30s continue to defy comparison and define the highest quality in the banjo making art. A musician himself, the company's namesake, Orville H. Gibson, was born in 1856 and began making handmade guitars and mandolins in the late 1890s. Unlike the mandolins of European design, distinguished by their large rounded body, Orville's instruments were much thinner, constructed with a carved solid wood top and bent wood back and sides. While unknown at the time, his innovative design would prove to be the basis for virtually all mandolins which were to follow. In the early 1900s, the mandolin was the most popular stringed instrument in America, and Orville Gibson's instruments were being met with great acceptance. Made to believe that he had taken his individual effort as far as he could go on his own, in 1902, a group of Kalamazoo businessmen convinced Orville to sell both his patents and his vision for the princely sum of $2,500, and the Gibson Mandolin and Guitar Manufacturing Company Limited was established. Orville Gibson never owned the company which bears his name. Although the company offered other fretted instruments, in the first 20 years of existence, the Gibson Company began a long pattern of focusing its research and production effort on the most popular instrument of the day, in this case the mandolin. The refinement of Orville's original designs into the perfect mandolin was an ongoing effort which seemed blissfully unaware of the banjo boom on the horizon. Gibson's earliest entries in the banjo market were elegant in appearance, but reflected more the company's favor to the established mandolin market than an innovative design thrust into the upcoming musical trend represented by the banjo. By the early 1920s, Gibson's lack of foresight in the banjo market found them playing a frantic game of catch-up and fighting for their very existence. In 1920, Gibson hired legendary mandolinist and acoustic engineer Lloyd Loar, who was put in charge of research and development. While Loar obviously favored the mandolin and its continued development, he can also claim a share of banjo fame as the engineer who designed the first of a long and ever-evolving line of Gibson mastertone banjos. Loar innovations include Gibson's floating ball-bearing tone ring, as well as the banjo industry's first true full resonator, both seen on Loar's personal Gibson TB5 mastertone banjo. While these design improvements reflect Gibson's innovative mastery, their best banjo efforts were yet to come. Following Loar's departure in January 1924, a new corporation aimed at reviving the failing company was formed. Renamed Gibson Incorporated, the new management's first responsibility was to make Gibson competitive in the banjo marketplace. Borrowing the general look of the full resonator banjos which Paramount introduced 2 years earlier, Gibson engineers incorporated their own innovations, such as Lloyd Loar's ball-bearing tone ring and the industry's only adjustable neck truss rod, into a new, completely redesigned line of Gibson mastertone banjos which debuted in 1925. As with mandolin development 2 decades earlier, Gibson was tenacious in its efforts to perfect the most popular instrument of the day, putting the bulk of their research, development, and production efforts into the banjo. The result of this endeavor was a quickly evolving series of banjo design advancements which would represent the finest banjos that Gibson would ever produce. In 1927, Gibson introduced what many consider to be their ultimate banjo designs. For sound and playability, these banjos sported Gibson's new 40-hole arch-top tone ring, as well as a very slim and comfortable neck made possible by Gibson's now patented neck truss rod. To accommodate almost any budget, like most other banjo manufacturers, Gibson offered a variety of levels of decoration on their banjos, all built around the standard array of mastertone components. Mastertone banjos in 1927 went from the basic TB3 all the way up to the elegance of the hand-carved and painted Florentine and Bella Voce. To establish and sell their new designs, Gibson embarked on a masterful and very expensive marketing campaign that would be the envy of any modern-day advertiser. In addition to endorsements from prominent musicians being secured, the company published a purely promotional magazine entitled Mastertone, which was widely distributed to music retailers. And to read the text of the 1927 Gibson catalog, one could not help but feel themselves anything less than a complete social outcast or professional failure if he or she were to be playing anything less than a Gibson banjo. The company's dominance in the banjo marketplace, as well as their ongoing banjo development, continued into the 1930s, even as the banjo was falling from favor. Following the introduction of their ultimate banjo offering, the stately All-American in 1932, Gibson introduced yet another series of completely redesigned mastertone banjos in 1936. To maintain full production during the years of the Great Depression, in addition to instruments which bore the Gibson name, the company often manufactured banjos for other distributors. Two notable examples of these are the Recording King banjos made from Montgomery Ward, as well as the Trujo banjos, distinctive for their lion-shaped peghead, which were marketed by a popular West Coast musical duo known as Truett and George. In 1937, when Gibson production was making a dramatic shift away from the banjo to accommodate the new demand for guitars, the company demonstrated further belief in the dying banjo market by including an unusual electric tenor banjo in their first offering of electric guitars. Since their first introduction in 1918, Gibson banjos have been a standard of comparison for both musicians and manufacturers alike. Of all of the companies which produced banjos during the golden age of the 1920s and 30s, Gibson remains the only one in business today. Even at times when banjo popularity was not at its peak, Gibson consistently offered a line of quality banjos to the public. When the nostalgic craze of the late 1940s hit, followed by the folk and bluegrass music boom of the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, Gibson stood ready to provide the needed instruments with both designs which had been proven decades earlier, as well as new innovations to the banjo marketplace. And today, as times, tastes, and musical trends continue their unending changes, Gibson craftsmen continue to produce instruments to fill orders from around the world for what has become a synonym for banjo quality, the Gibson Mastertone.